The quarterback actually knows who I am? Maybe I should start rethinking sitting in the front row. Why do I say that? The ball just hit me square in the face. I was afraid to touch my eye because I didn't want to feel how sore it probably was. The ball came out of nowhere, literally the middle of the field, and rammed into the side of my face. Henry and Jane burst out laughing. What are best friends for, really? Because I'd like to get rid of mine. Quarterback, number 8 player, Tom Campbell, jogged toward me to get the ball back. For a minute, I forgot that I was reeling from pain and thanked my lucky stars for this interaction. Jane nudged me with her elbow, which I swatted away because, well, I had a reputation to protect. The most gorgeous human to exist was coming over to meet me. When we got there, he winced. Seems like the ball's familiar with you, since you sit here all the time. I handed him the ball and shrugged. Is there anything like too much school spirit? Sorry about that. Conan's still working on his pass. He took the ball from my hand and our fingertips touched, sending a jolt of electricity through my body. Oh, no worries about that. My fault for sitting in the front row, I chuckled. Oh, well, actually I made the throw, so it really is my bad. Poor Conan was just going to be my excuse. But he does have a lousy catch. Probably why we're going to lose. But hey, I gotta thank him because I got to talk to you, right? He smiled at me. As I was struggling to find the right words to say, a yell came from the field, calling Tom back to play. You're going to want to put some ice on that, okay? Gotta go. Bye, stranger. Wish us luck. And he jogged away. Henry leaned to whisper in my ear as the referee's bell sounded. I'm no expert, but that was flirting. I hushed him. I was not going to let anyone ruin the moment. I knew I didn't have to rethink our seating position. This long game is in full effect. On the other side of me, Jane spoke. You know you are going to have to ice that, right? I flared at her and she backed off, laughing. I couldn't bother to focus on the rest of the game anymore, but it was no surprise that we won. The Falcons had a perfect season so far, and this win was taking them to the championship game. 1 week later, I hadn't missed a game since I started high school, but I just had to be sick that Friday night. It was the last game of the season, and I was looking forward to watching us win the championship. I forced my friends to keep me updated after every point scored, while I lay at home, miserable and weak for the whole day. It's a shame they never televised high school football, else my dad and I would be sat on the couch together, watching and cheering the team on. I had loved the game of football since I was a kid, watching it all the time with my dad and grandpa. After my grandpa died, the game brought my dad and me even closer. And once I got into high school, my school spirit was at an all-time high whenever it came to the football team. My dad had also tried to get me to play football many times, but somehow I was never inclined to actually play sports. I had 2 left feet when it came to anything outdoorsy or practical skills. Being book smart was my strength, and I was fine with it. But it never stopped me from admiring the outdoorsy and practical games as a spectator. I felt pretty sad that I missed watching our team win the championship game for the first time in 5 years. And even more that I couldn't see Tom's reaction when they did. The feeling of being a part of the crowd when something historical like that happened couldn't be beaten. 3 days later, after my little food poisoning stint, I was as good as new and was back at school on Monday. There was a celebratory aura around the school, and seeing as our football team had won the championship, it wasn't hard to decipher why. The team's lunch table was crowded with supporters, their lockers decorated and filled with congratulatory letters. It was all very cliché. Tom was flanked the whole day with some posse or the other hyping him up, and at every turn there was someone being extra nice in their congratulations to him. To my eyes, however, he seemed like he would rather be anywhere else but there, and I felt bad for him, having to succumb to the pressures of being a jock, when of all I'd seen, he was nothing like a jock. After the last period, I was at my locker, getting my textbooks out on my way home, when a figure was waiting next to me once I closed the locker doors. I jumped in fear only to realize who I was faced with. The one and only Tom Campbell. He smiled apologetically. Sorry for scaring you. I shook it off. What? No, it's fine, really. Okay. You're Charlie, right? He asked. I nodded. Great, so I noticed you weren't at the last game on Friday, he said, shuffling his feet. I was shocked. How did he know that? Did Jane tell him? Did he ask about me? Yeah, I was sick, but I hated to miss the game. Congratulations, by the way. But if you don't mind me asking, how did you notice that? He cleared his throat. Well, the ball hit you square in the face 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you remember that, he trailed off. Of course, how could I forget that? I just nodded. He continued. Well, you're always in the front row with your friends, always early and always cheering so enthusiastically. It's a bit hard to not notice you. By the way, how's your eye doing? Took your advice. Iced the bad boy when I got home and had a little bit of a shiner, but I can't complain. It's a badass look for me, so I think I should be thanking you for making me interesting, even if it was for a while. He was leaning on the locker next to mine, and he turned to look at me when I said that. Well, I think you were always so interesting. He sounded like he was flirting with me, but I didn't want to jump to any conclusions. Henry had warned me about doing that. Out loud, I said, well, how would you know? It's not like you talk to me very often. He chuckled. You're right, I don't. But disregarding the fact that I might come off as a stalker here, I observe you quite a lot, and I've wanted to get to know you. If only I weren't swamped with being such a popular guy. I rolled my eyes. Okay, Mr. Arrogant. If you do say so yourself. We smiled at each other for a while before he cleared his throat. Anyways, I was actually planning on talking to you after that game, you know. Finally get to talk to you and all, but you were nowhere to be found. So I thought I'd check in on you. Make sure everything was okay. My eyes widened. Oh yeah, thank you for caring at all. I'm fine now. Really wish I saw that last touchdown, but yeah, I'm good. He smiled at me. Well, brilliant. I will see you around. He turned on his heels and started to walk away, but paused and hurried back. Actually, do you mind if we exchange numbers? It would help improve this little problem we have. And you could say no, of course. I pursed my lips, trying to feign composure all while my heart was palpitating in my chest. How and why does Tom Campbell want my number? A million things raced through my mind except for the answer to the question he asked me. Finally, I put on a small smile and held out my hand. Your phone? He gave it to me and I put my number in it. Text me so I can save yours. He sends me a text and my phone beeps, and the exchange is done. He grins at me. Thanks, I'll be sure to text you more often. He turns around, then I get a beep on my phone, a text from him saying, hi. I looked over my shoulder and saw him smiling at me, then he walked away. I may be crazy, but our chemistry was kind of amazing. Once he's out of earshot, I shoot a text to our group chat, informing them of the crazy story. Henry had a hard time believing me and tried to debunk the story, to which I reminded him about my long game trick. And now it's finally paying off. But truthfully, I was as dumbfounded as he was, unable to fully process the interaction I just had. A month later, Tom and I had been talking and hanging out more and more. I had more classes with him than I had with Henry and James, so we sat together for every class that didn't have a permanent seating arrangement. We hung out at the park where he taught me how to enjoy football aside from being a spectator, and we shared similar tastes in films and music, so we became close friends really quickly. Many a time we had some intimate moments that left me questioning his feelings. I was already well aware of mine, and getting to know him only solidified it more. But I don't want to come off as forward and just assume he shared the same feelings I did. One afternoon, he forced me to engage in a sport that I was very comfortable being a spectator in. He dragged me to the park and played a game of catch. I sucked at it, but he was very kind in his criticism. All right, you've caught the ball more than twice now. I think we can graduate to a much more physical aspect of the game. I eyed him, my arms crossed. Need I remind you that I got a black eye from being a spectator? What more do you want from me, Tom? He laughed, his teeth on full display. It's fine, okay? You're just going to try tackling me. That's all. Can you try that? I huffed but nodded. He stood a small distance from me. So I'm going to stand here, and since I'm with the ball, you're just going to push me down and take it from me and try to get back to where you stood before I catch you, okay? I nodded. I cracked my neck and got into stance. Once he said go, I ran towards him and used all my energy to push him down and grab the ball from him. Then I started to run again, but I heard him close behind me. He caught up to me and tackled me to the ground before I could get back. Curse my slow legs and unfit lungs! His arms were wrapped around my waist and we were both laughing, trying to catch our breaths. His face was so close to mine, so we locked eyes and the laughter died down. I stared intently at him, and his pupils flickered between my eyes and my lips. His breathing quickened, and our hearts raced. Then he pulled away and chuckled nervously. That was a good try, but I think we should call it a day, so you'll live to fight again. The day ended there, but those moments we had, the accidentally touching, falling over the other person laughing, and staring at each other for longer than relatively normal. Not to mention his not-so-subtle approach to flirting and the nonstop compliments. They were enough to allow me the courage to assume there were some feelings there. A few days later, we were hanging out in my room doing homework and whatnot when he got serious all of a sudden. "Hey, Charlie, is it okay if we talk about something?" The change in his tone worried me, but I tried not to assume, yet again, as I was fond of that habit. He sat next to me, fiddling with his hands. I heard him take a deep breath, and nothing could have prepared me for the next words he said. "I'm very nervous right now, so I'm going to just say this all together, regardless of how rushed it sounds." He took a deep breath. "So, I know that I've been a bit of a knob when it came to doing things with you. But I really enjoy your company, a lot. I think about you a lot. When I'm home and watching game tapes or whatever, I wonder if you're watching the same thing I am. Or I wonder if I could invite you over and listen to you ramble on and on about the psychology of football. Truth be told, I could listen to you ramble on and on about anything, Charlie. You make me nervous in a good way, and it's a feeling that I'm sick and tired of feeling in secret. I want this good feeling to keep going, so that's why I'm telling you that I like you, Charlie. A lot. I really do." He let out a sigh of relief. "Oh gee, I survived that." He looked at me, and surely enough there was evidence of analysis going on in my head. It's not like I wasn't very sure of all he said, I just didn't expect to react like this when this confession came out. I was dumbfounded mostly, and was trying to find the best way to express how happy I was. He nudged me. "Hey, you haven't said a word in a couple of minutes, and I'm metaphorically sweating profusely out of fear. Can I borrow a vowel or two?" I finally snapped back to reality and gathered my thoughts. "You were the first thing I noticed when I started coming to football games here. I was so drawn to you. I mean, are beautiful. You're a really good player, and you just seemed so intriguing. Many times I've actually lost track of the game just staring at you. So I think it's safe to say that I like you too. For a while too. And don't get me wrong, you suck at hiding it so much that I'd tell my friends that something happened and they'd warn me not to assume or get ahead of myself, so it's kind of nice to know that I wasn't wrong in assuming we were sharing the same feelings. And I'm really happy that you do, Tom. Truly. I like you too. But I'd like to know, when did you start getting interested in me?" I asked. I had been curious, but hadn't been afforded the opportunity to ask that question until now. He hummed. "Well, it's been a while. I can't pinpoint the exact moment, but I know that seeing you in the front row of the bleachers became a sight I never got tired of seeing. And I started looking forward to seeing you more and more and more. You can even say that you were my motivation for this season." "Aw, that is so sweet, Tom. Here I was being superficial and admiring your body, and I became your motivation." He burst out laughing, his body edging closer to mine slowly. Our shoulders touching, fingers inching closer together until they finally touched. And this time he didn't pull away. He laced our fingers together and turned his body to face mine. The laughter has died down, and that fast-paced breathing and heart-racing feeling of butterflies returned to my insides. It was a scene I had imagined one too many times in my head, but I was never sure that it would happen. Until now. His breath fanned my face as his eyes were glued to my lips, and his voice was low and soft. "I don't plan on running away this time." A small smile came to my lips. "I'm glad." He leaned in, closer and closer until we were only centimeters apart. "Can I kiss you?" I smiled and nodded my head, and he closed the space between us. His lips were warm and soft as they touched mine, and his hands immediately cupped the back of my neck. There was this sense of urgency, giving away the fact that he had wanted to do this for a while. Lucky for him, so had I. We kissed for what felt like ages until we pulled apart. He had this really cute, boyish smile on his face, and his cheeks were a deep red color. "I have been waiting quite a while to do that," he laughed. 6 weeks later, after that kiss and all it entailed, Tom and I started dating. We kept our relationship a secret at my request because I knew what coming out would do to both of our lives. The world was progressing, but high school is as it is, and it's best to keep life-changing decisions and events like this a secret, or else who knew how fast a social life could take a hit, especially ones like mine and Tom. I had a relatively normal social life, my 2 close friends, and I was generally interactive with other people. Tom was the resident celebrity. He didn't ask for it, but he couldn't leave it if he tried. He's just a really good football player, but that happened to buy him fame in school. We told some people, though, people who deserved to know and who we trusted. My friends knew. He told some of his friends, I told my dad, and he was ecstatic. Maybe a little too much, but I couldn't blame him. If my kid was dating someone like Tom, I'd be ecstatic as well. Tom also told his parents. They'd always known his orientation, so it wasn't much of a surprise. And we had a steady stream of support from our family and friends. School went on spring break and we had a week to be ourselves without the pressure of hiding from school. We generally hung out at places that our schoolmates weren't familiar with, so it wasn't so hard to hide in plain sight. One special day for me was when Henry, Jane, Tom, Joe, Conan, and I all went bowling out of the city. It was a really great day because I had the notion that we wouldn't be bombarded by people from school, so we had a larger margin for error. We all took a bus out of town and went to a really cool bowling alley. Bowling itself was fun, although I sucked at it, but the fun was in the experience. Joe and Henry were really competitive though, so watching them play to top each other was really fun to watch. After the game ended, we all split up and went to play other games. Tom and I stayed at the arcade and played a few games, but we were more interested in just being together and talking. At every corner he would sneak a kiss here and there, and I wasn't complaining, but it was certainly a lot. Everyone reconvened later to get something to eat, and we were on our way back to town. It wasn't anything particularly special, but it was a really special day for me because we could just be two boys in love, having a good day with our friends. Or so we thought. After the break, school was back in session and we fell back into the routine of being hush-hush around each other. Then one day, the thing I feared the most happened. There was a photo of Tom and I kissing. It was from the last day of the break when we all went bowling. Tom and I went to get snacks for everyone and we kissed. We didn't think too much of it at the time and just kissed before going back to the party of friends. The whole thing blew out of proportion before I could even get my bearings, and I may have imagined the repercussions of this happening. But it was even worse than I imagined. From then on, I was bombarded with questions at every turn. I didn't know you were gay, Charlie. How did it start? How is Tom, of all people, gay? Question after question after question. And since we lived in a free country, the not-so-nice squad made sure to show their faces in the situation. Tom and I had enough homophobic slurs hurled at us from people at a safe distance away. Our first course of action was to ignore them and go the haters gonna hate route. But everyone has their limit. Especially when you add cyberbullying to the mix and the wonderful people of our small town writing strongly worded letters and sending them to our houses or leaving them in our lockers. My father was very livid about the whole situation, and even his attempts to have a word with the school authorities proved fruitless. We'd have an assembly every 2 days on the consequences of bullying, and that was it. Never really taking any action to find the bullies or make an example, because let's face it, they're as homophobic as the majority of the school. I noticed as Tom's patience weakened at every letter and every word. Lucky the season was over, or else who knows what would have happened in the locker room. All hell broke loose when some random guy walked past us in the parking lot and sent the whisper of a slur our way while we were all walking home. Tom snapped. "Hey, funny guy! What did you say to me?" The guy kept walking, but his pace quickened. Tom caught up to the guy and pulled him by the collar. "Since you're so funny, I'd love for you to dazzle us with your wit. Come on, spit it out." The guy tried to avoid Tom's eyes and wiggle out of his grasp, but Tom wasn't budging, even as Jane and I tried to calm him down. Then the guy did the stupid thing and repeated the hateful word. The next thing we knew, he was slammed into the wall. Tom held him by the collar of his shirt and yelled at him. "You really have some balls to talk to me and my boyfriend like that, and I promise you, the rest of this school is not going to like it when I make you an example." He swung and clocked the guy in the face, and blood trickled down his nose. Joe, Conan, and I finally managed to pull Tom away from the guy as he crouched on the floor. Tom was seething and pointed at the guy. "Bigots like you need to be taught a lesson, and I'd be happy to volunteer for the job." The parking lot wasn't empty, so there were eyes to witness the incident. A couple of people escorted the guy to the nurse's office, and I just knew that this would make a lot of waves in school. Whether it helped or not, we'd find out eventually. 2 weeks later. After Tom's blowout in the parking lot, the harassment ceased a little bit. It didn't vanish overnight or for weeks, but it was a lot less than it was before. The die-hard haters would never let anyone scare them out of being haters. Tom was lucky he got off with detention the way he did, and was even luckier that all this happened after the season was over, or else he would be getting benched from the team. When I got to know that, I decided it would be a good idea if Tom and I kept some distance between each other. Everywhere I went in school, I was greeted with whispers and glances and giggles in my direction, and it was starting to get too much to handle. So I broke up with Tom, over text, and I also chose to avoid him for the foreseeable future. Yes, I know it was dumb, and the numerous texts I got from him made that very obvious. Even my dad offered his rare pieces of advice after being such a rock star and keeping Tom at bay from the house. He handed me a cup of coffee and sat next to me. "Charlie, I know you think this is helping, but you know you're only making the both of you miserable. The school isn't helping, I know. I've tried many times, but maybe this is one of those things where you just have to fight it together. You will always have my support and your friends. But don't shut him out. It's not fair to him." I sighed. "Dad, I know. I don't want to do this, but I don't know if I have the courage to do what you're asking me. Or maybe I just don't want to. I don't know." He hummed. "Just think about it, okay?" In school, it was even harder to stay away from him. We had classes together and he didn't stop trying to talk to me, but I held my position. And unfortunately, I was right. Even though I could do nothing but ignore the homophobic crowd to keep them at bay, the harassment and letters stopped. It seemed like most people were just pissed that I was dating their favorite celebrity and took him off the market. 10 weeks later, the longest 2 months of my life were before summer break. Tom and I hadn't spoken a word to each other since we broke up, and everything was relatively back to the way it was. I was looking forward to summer because it gave me 3 months to be away from the toxicity of high school and mentally prepare myself for the rush that was going to be my senior year. At least once that was over, I'd be free from that godforsaken place. On the last day of school, I noticed Tom with Conan and Joe glancing over at me. My heart ached to talk, to go over and hug him and kiss him, but I held myself back. I was going to use the summer to also try to get over him, and maybe I'll have a shot at normalcy next year. 2.5 hours later, I got home later that evening after spending some time with Jane before she left town for summer, and I was home alone. My dad was out of town at a conference, so I had the place to myself till the next day. I planned on sprawling on the couch and watching any and every rerun of college football that the cable had to offer me. I had made the popcorn, gotten my juice, and was just about to get comfortable when the doorbell rang. I hoped if I stayed put, the person would go away, or at least say something to confirm the urgency of their visit, but they just kept knocking. I eventually opened the door only to be met with the sight of Tom. He smiled. "Long time no see, Charlie." I let him in and he made a beeline for the couch. "What are you doing here?" I asked him as he put a handful of my popcorn in his mouth. "Remember? We had this exact plan on the last day of school. I'm only honoring it." He was so offhanded in his way of talking, which annoyed me. "That was before we broke up. You have no reason to be here, Tom. Please leave," I said, crossing my arms. He smirked and stood up. "You miss me." "Well, duh. What does that have to do with me telling you to get out?" "You don't want me to leave, Charlie. You need me to." "Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not leaving here. Not until you at least explain something to me. You've owed it to me for 3 months. No one is here to stop us now. Start talking." "My dad is going to be home soon. There's no way this would work," I lied. He scoffed. "You know that's not going to fly, right? I know your dad's out of town. You know how I know? Henry told me. So once again, sweetheart, start talking." I sighed, taking a seat on the couch. "Where do I start, huh? From the fact I was doxxed on the internet for loving you? That high school's a fucking cliche? That your fan club was calling for my head because they didn't like you with me? That you were getting in trouble because of me? Take your pick, Tom. I had my reasons." He knelt down in front of me. "You could have just told me all of this, Charlie, not breaking up with me over text and ignoring my existence." My voice raised with a slight crack. "You think it didn't kill me to do that? I didn't want to, but you were so calm about everything. I didn't know what else to do. I felt like you weren't taking this seriously. Like I was the one thinking about the repercussions for both of us. I hated being away from you, damn it. I love you, Tom, but I don't know what planet you were on, but it was not getting any better for me. I needed you to trust me, Charlie. I know that I can be nonchalant and a little bit naive, but I knew that I would do anything and everything to protect you. I was never going to let anything happen to you, and I wish you trusted me more with everything you were going through, because I was being tough for you. I knew it was harder for you, so I made sure that I could be your rock, but you didn't even want to lean on me. Before I could even talk to you about it, you just shut me out. How long did you think you could do that for anyway? I shrugged. I don't know. Longer than this, that's for sure. He chuckled. You're quite shallow-headed sometimes, you know that, right? I rolled my eyes and he laughed. God, I missed that laugh so much. His hands held mine now, tenderly. I love you too, Charlie. I want you to know that. You mean so much to me, it scares me sometimes. When I look at you, no matter what is going on with me, I know that I'll be fine as long as you're with me. I smiled at him and kissed him. 3 whole months since I felt those lips, and it still feels like they were molded just to fit mine. So does this mean we're back together, he asked. I nodded. We have the summer to do whatever we want, and when we get back to school, I don't care what happens. We'll get through it together. Promise. Conclusion. We spent the entire summer making up for lost time, in between my summer job and getting ready for college applications, but we barely felt the effect of it all because of the enormous weight of carrying what people thought was lifted off our, well, mostly my shoulders. And when school came around, sure, it was quite the shock to everyone else, but everyone had seemingly moved on from it and had matured since then. Plus, they were all occupied with cheering the seniors on the team to their last championship before they graduated, so the whole fiasco became last year's old news. At that point, we realized that we could get through anything as long as we trusted each other and let our love outweigh it. Have you ever been outed before? What was the experience like? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.